Alright, is this like fucking recording me or what? We gotta test. See what kind of a test we got. Nigga, you can pause? Oh, nigga, this is unpaused. Did that make some like kind of a cut in the video? Because we just did it again, and I wanted to see if that paused it like a smooth transition. Alright, this is to test if this is a smooth transition. How do you stop recording now? Like, where's the stop button? You know why some people wear glasses when giving interviews and engaging in public relations, and other people outright never be wearing glasses when communicating with anyone else, even if it's a private conversation? On a surface level, it just looks like an accessory, but glasses mask you and protect your aura, man. Again, besides the physical protective properties of glasses, as you just saw before with the lens bloom, whereas glasses can hide you and protect you from bright lights, UV rays, glare, glasses also protect the energy you radiate from your eyes. You ever figured when animals stare each other down in the animal kingdom, they're not staring at one another's nuts and gauging the size of the pecker. They're looking each other in the eyes. That's what a stare down is. So when some celebrities wear glasses when they're giving an interview, or they're just talking to someone else, we can look at it from both ways. They're, one, trying to hide something about themselves, can even be hiding the way they're feeling, what substances they're on. Maybe they got bloodshot eyes, and then you can start to form an impression that they're substance afflicted or they're coming off a big one. Maybe they got all these bright lights in their face, and because those camera shutters are going off at 1,000 photos every 2 seconds, they don't want to get a less than flattering photo taken of them and then circulate it all around the net. A still image, a snapshot, an unflattering one at that. But on a contrary point, glasses can also mask one's intent. For example, when I look at a person, I'm having a one-on-one conversation with them, I gauge what they're doing with their glasses if they have them. Are they keeping them off in their hand? Are they sitting on the top of their head? Did they hang their glasses down and are looking at me in this kind of the way I read it, submissive kind of look, yet I have their attention and curiosity piqued, and also they want to be able to look in my eyes. So sometimes don't perceive that someone's avoiding. It can even be that they're trying to enhance eye contact. That's when you see in movies, sometimes gangster movies comes to mind, when you get the we'll call him the boss, will be coming in talking to people, and he has their attention because they know he's the boss. He doesn't have anything to hide. He doesn't need to remove his glasses. But when you see this kind of a scene in movies where people really want to hammer the point home, or they're singling you out and they really want you to heed it, so they've spoken to a group with the glasses on, a cohort of people, and then they're trying to hammer home a point to a specific individual, they'll even do this. When they say it, or as they're saying it, they're trying to make that eye contact to really nail the point that's being made to that specific individual they're doing it to. And because I'm not stupid, nor boring, nor consider the people that do watch me moronic and below the IQ bell curve, I can't just sit there making videos about women, pussy, how to wet pussy of a woman. I can't just talk about the same things over and over, nor do I want to talk about things that you already know, things that haven't ever made you go, man, like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's like, makes you intrigued, comes back to that word, piques your interest. And just talking about the same shit isn't going to cut it. The only reason people sit there and watch the same thing over and over and over, the same topic with slightly rearranged words over and over again, is because they want confirmation bias. Also, did you know a lot of people that talk on YouTube don't even make a video in the course of an afternoon like I do, like I've done with every single video besides one or two on this channel where I've sat there and cut things over the course of a few days. Most people don't make talking videos unless it's taken from a podcast, and even then it's taken from a podcast. Generally, it can be constructed over multiple things that are cut up, but it can be just a segment. A lot of people make videos over the course of numerous days, and it might only be about a 10 to 15 minute long video. That's why you see things like the cuts that I illustrated at the start of this one. They might not even be there the same day, let alone an hour or 2 or 5 later. So that's it. If you want to be honest, transparent, respectful to the person you're having a one-on-one conversation with, take off your glasses. If you're a political figure, that's why you take off your glasses. You want to form a connection with people. That's why I'm going to keep mine on. I'm not here to make a connection. I'm just here to spit. Was this whole, since my last video was on the topic, especially towards the end, I was about to say Nick Fuentes. He's part of the topic. Charlie Kirk, hence like the thumbnail of my last video. That's what I'm going to go into now. Yeah, so this is how I can jump the cuts. Yeah, worked it out. How good is that? It's how you jump the cuts. Now look at this, bro. In the end, can't talk, can't cut. I got tongue-tied, but see, I don't want to cut the video. I want to leave that in to show that when it's genuine, you have bloopers, and I like to leave mine in. Even though I'm trying to gain your attention on a serious note, what I was trying to say is now we've got a topic. We've got the framework for the rest of the video. You really can't make a schizo rant video unless you intend to have a schizo audience. If you have been interested via hearing bits and bobs, because it's kind of unavoidable, and you've never really sat down to think about any of it, this might continue to interest you. And if you're going down a bunch of rabbit holes since the event took place, looking into things left, right, and center, questioning narratives, even just slightly, stick around. So if you've heard any narrative, then odds are you have heard the official narrative, which is the FBI's narrative. So for the sake of streamlining this, I'm not going to go into absolute details of the FBI narrative, but I'm going to touch on some points of what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that the man they have in custody had a disassembled rifle in a, from what they've shown us, a 10-liter backpack. Now, the way backpacks are measured is through liters. All right? It's not pouches. It's not how many zips it has. Liters. Now, we haven't got an official statement of how many liters this backpack was, so we can only go by the low-resolution imagery, but it looks like a backpack that is roughly 10 liters. So in this 10-liter backpack, he had a disassembled rifle. Again, I'm reiterating, going by the official story, he assembled it on the rooftop. He fired the weapon. He disassembled the weapon. Now, it's already disassembled with, again, the footage they've provided us when he jumps off the rooftop, when he's making his getaway. So they allege that that's the rooftop after he fired, but he's only jumping off with the backpack, not a rifle in hand, not tossing a rifle or anything of the appearance of such. Before jumping off this roof in the CCTV image, he's jumping off with a backpack. So the narrative would go as such: after he fires the shot, singular, kills Charlie, he assembles the weapon, puts it in the backpack because they didn't find it anywhere else. I'll get to that. He then jumps off the roof, runs away, and then reassembles. He reassembles the rifle because they found the rifle assembled in essentially a bush. I'm glad I took the time to really see things unravel before I started making any more points about this entire Charlie Kirk incident. And it's an incident more than a murder at this stage because of the things that are unfolding because of it, the things that are coming to light. It's an incident because the narrative around it is questionable. It would no longer be an incident. It would have marked itself as an event if we weren't questioning the narrative of the FBI. We wouldn't be questioning the entire, as Nick Fuentes would describe, grotesque, I believe is the word he used, but please source check me on that, and I apologize, Nick, if I didn't use the right words. But what he meant to say is that they're really milking this entire thing for what it's worth. So I'm going to paraphrase that, and I agree. The way they're milking this and taking it for everything it's worth raises questions around things such as his wife and her grief. The way she's gone about this whole process is questionable. For me personally, I already found it rather obscure when she made a Facebook post with her presumably already embalmed husband, Charlie Kirk, where she's got her hands on his hand. Maybe I'll edit that image in if I find it. So this video might seem a little disorganized because I'm trying to play two parts of the story, trying to convey a certain message while also trying to play devil's advocate per se, but trying to stay within the framing of the topic at hand. I will say this: if they labeled it the ceremony where she spoke in the traditional sense of, we'll say, the denomination, we'll just say Catholicism. Okay, well, I'm not talking about necessarily agnostic or Lutheran, but Catholic religion recognizes different stages of a funeral, which would be like a vigil, which can be called a wake, and it's usually, though, conducted in funeral homes or a church. An example on television that's coming to mind of a wake, for those of you who've seen it, was Opie's funeral. That was held in 3 stages. We only saw the first stage. That's like the public stage, the wake, when a group of people say goodbye to the body, like an open casket format. Now, I don't completely know the details if something like a wake is bypassed, though I don't see why it would be if it's a closed casket. Another movie that comes to mind is actually a poster that's behind me, is Max Payne with Mark Wahlberg. There's a brief scene where Max Payne goes to the house of his fallen partner or ex-partner in that movie, and I believe it was closed casket in the house. So that would be called a wake. Now, if there was already a wake, which I'm thinking the wake was private, which is why we got that photo of Charlie's wife with his already presumably embalmed body, where he was dressed up and had the makeup on his right hand that we saw in the photo. So that would have been the private wake, which then again raises the question for me, so what's the public ceremony? We called it a vigil, aka wake, but that wasn't the wake then. If the wake was when she was with the body, was it a public wake? Okay, fair enough, it's a public wake. Why did you need a public wake? To make it a spectacle. Comes back to that point that I made. Why'd you need to make it a spectacle? Who stands to gain from the spectacle of parading? I'm calling it that. It will now probably seem real rude. People will disagree. They'll say I'm insensitive. Maybe that's exactly what they want you to think about someone like me saying this, so you buy the narrative just a little bit more. You say, man, this guy's crazy talking with the Sunnies. She's the grieving widow. You're crazy. You're dreaming things up. What's he smoking? What's he vaping? What's he injecting? What's he drinking? The answer's nothing, but my point now is, why did it need to go public? So then again, switching up, being devil's advocate. Now, I know that's not really a fitting term because we're talking about Catholicism. It's a tongue-in-cheek, all right? I don't want you to take it so literally that I'm saying devil's advocate while talking about Catholicism. It's tongue-in-cheek. So the other side of the argument is that, well, it's a chance for the public to say goodbye, which is also what a wake is. So there was a private wake and then there was a public wake because they're giving other friends that weren't at the intimate setting, loyal supporters, in general gatherers that believed in his message. So that is all held so they get a chance to say their goodbyes because they weren't just, even physically, even if they wanted to invite, they can't get everyone inside a funeral home or a church or in Charlie's home where the original wake might have happened. So her actions, her speech, going on stage and what some people, not me, but I'm just regurgitating information floating out there, some people, and having looked over their opinion, can't agree with some of them, are questioning her authenticity, her tears, the whole Christian motive, yeah, sure, about forgiveness. But the way she went about it. See, when you forgive someone, it's a rather interpersonal thing. I'll even have my glasses off to echo this point home. When you forgive someone, you're forgiving them directly through the grace of God. Again, I'm speaking as a traditional Catholic, or at least that is what she should be trying to practice as a traditional Catholic herself, Erica Kirk, that is. So when she's forgiving someone, it doesn't need grandstanding, it doesn't need a public forum. And that is what a lot of people raise into question in regards to her authenticity. Now, mind you, she is trying to show herself, and that is what the public, for the most part, is generally led to believe, that she is a grieving, fair, Catholic, fair, traditional woman. Now, why don't I say fair after traditional? Well, is she really acting traditionally? I mean, she's meant to forgive this guy. That's on her. That's between her, God, and the person she's forgiving. It's between three entities, we'll call it that. But by no means do you need to make your forgiveness to someone. You can make an apology public, because you're apologizing for what you did to a group of people. But forgiveness is an interpersonal act. So then it raises the question of, you needed to make a public announcement for your forgiveness? You needed, and then why did you need to make a spectacle out of it? Does it tie in any way that you, in her words again, at a WWE event, if I'm not mistaken, is I need to seize control of Turning Point, or I am going to seize control of Turning Point? Why use that particular word, that you're going to seize control of Turning Point? And what motive might there possibly be to seize control? Just dawned on me that a motive might be that you're the figurehead for having seized control, but behind you, in constructively speaking, there's a board of people in control. You're just the figurehead of the board. Think Bruce Wayne in Batman. He's the figurehead. He's the person that most people in that world of Batman, I use this as an example, people would have looked at Bruce Wayne as the head, the CEO, the figurehead, hence that word, of the company. And that's what they're going to see Charlie Kirk's wife as, the figurehead. But she's not actually in control. There's a board behind her. There's someone else calling the shots, or a group of people coming to a unanimous decision. A bit like a jury, for example, having to come to a unanimous decision. It's not an individual's decision. I think a lot of people can agree that that is pretty much how politics is run. That's how it operates. You know, House of Representatives, Senate. When a bill passes, it has to go through groups of people. It's not just Prime Minister or President that ultimately shot calls. He maybe has to put the last signature down. But we can come back to that about that decision was cooked up, brainstormed, and essentially passed, was agreed upon by a lot of people before it hit the president's desk for his signature. So backing up, why did I use the word motive? Well, it's not her motive per se. She's oblivious to the fact that there is a motive scheming behind her. She's the figurehead. She is going to be the one that you see talking, giving speeches, but she isn't really going to be the one changing things. There'll be a group, we'll just say of 11 others, that are going to be signing off on what she is just going to be regurgitating on their behalf. They're the ones with the motive, and that ties in with something that I was theorizing as well. When people want you gone, generally it's the ones in your inner circle, especially when you're a leader of something. That's what usurping is. They are the ones that have the most to gain, especially when they can guise it as they stand to lose so much by not having you as a leader anymore. That's what the public then thinks. But they actually stood to gain a lot more. Just came off like that. That the public thinks that, man, it's a big loss for the organization. But the organization within, the 11 others, are going, yeah, that's what they think. Look at all that we just gained. But how do we show or not show thereby what we just gained? We need a figurehead. His wife will do, perfect figurehead. Because we can guise it by law as well. Yeah, by law, she inherits it. And she's the perfect, I was going to use the word fall guy, but she's the perfect idol in this scenario. The grieving trad widow. Who better than to take over on a visual plane than the grieving trad widow? Good looking too. Now, why is that important? Well, good looking people garner your attention more. This is just another fact. People that look deformed, ugly, disgusting, they don't convey as much attention than someone who stands out for their looks and appearance and the way they carry themselves when they're presenting information. She captivates a certain type of audience. I just realized conveys attention isn't the right word to use. They do convey attention. I like to back up and correct myself when I catch it. They convey attention for the wrong reasons. Their deformity is the focal point, not what's coming out of their mouth. It's another reason, if you got this far, why I'm wearing shades in this video. It isn't about me and the look in my eyes. I want people that have gotten this far to listen to what I'm saying. I'm just the vessel in this. So I just put the information out there. I am not on the side of, yeah, you go girl. Just in case I lost you, I'm clarifying the points that I'm not on the side, yeah, this is the way, and she really is allowing, and the organization is allowing through all these memorial services for people to respectfully say their goodbyes. Nor am I saying that this whole thing is fishy, she's insincere, she's disingenuous, this is all a show. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not here to cast the first stone. But at a glance, and after this entire video, if you followed along, something is amiss. Something smells fishy. Something's not quite right. You can't just be entirely on the you go girl side and we're all with you, because it doesn't come across genuine. It doesn't come across sincere. It might be, but it just doesn't come across. Looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, remember? Probably a duck, but you haven't seen that it is a duck. Man, I need a cut, because I'm going to lose my train of thought and fuck this up. If I look at it from two ways, it's questionable, why was it so public? But even if you look at it traditionally, you see that, well, going by the traditional steps of the wake, and after the wake being the mass, the ritual ceremony carried out generally by a priest in a church, is the part of the funeral process where it might be closed or open casket as well. But then that is the part, according to Catholic beliefs, where you've already had the wake and now you are doing the actual Catholic ritual with the body as part of the funeral process to then prepare it. It's like a rite of passage, okay? Think of it that way. Wake, the chance for everyone to say goodbye. You could even say there's the intimate wake. All right, that's where the closest people to the person say goodbye. The open forum wake, then there's again a closed forum. Sometimes it'll be open when, say, a prominent figure is buried and the church is open. You have heard of those. So then after the church ceremony, which is the rite of passage, there's the third stage where the body is lowered into the ground and marked with a gravestone. Now again, for your information, that third stage is a rite of passage for the individual being buried. It's a brief tribute that's performed at the cemetery, the gravesite I should say, and it's a meaningful passage of scripture that is read out to essentially be a final service that is a rite of committal. So you don't just do a wake and then after the wake, the public goodbye, you have a church ceremony, and then when the body gets to the ground, it's just dumped. No, that's why it's the final service, and it's the rite of committal, which, again, coming back to the very start of this, is very traditional. It's exactly how it's supposed to be done. So there's that part of me that will question, well, why was this done so publicly? Was she or wasn't she sincere? She's not really portraying the grieving widow. But then the other part of me is, well, she did it pretty traditionally if she had the private wake, but there it is. It wasn't a private wake, and this just ties in and pulls and tugs at me from every which way and that way. Why was it posted on, was it Instagram or Facebook, that image? Why did it was tactically posted. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Well, if it's a private wake, and you're the grieving widow, and you know, at that stage, you know you're going to have a public wake, why did you need to post that on social media where you knew it would circulate? You're not just someone that people clicked on and they're like, yeah, tip my heart, I empathize. And then the world just moved on. You knew that image was going to circulate. You knew it would trend. You knew it would generate headlines. So all of a sudden, you had an intimate wake, but you leaked it. Why? If you knew there was going to be a public memorial, as they called it. So I'm going to take another side to this whole thing. When people say, well, Why isn't there any photos of the funeral? Why isn't there any photos of his widow? Why isn't there any kind of imagery of the church part of it, the putting the body in the ground part of it? Well, I think the simple answer is it'd be distasteful. And perhaps even the atheist, this is just devil's advocate, tongue-in-cheek comment again. Even the atheist photographers know that it's distasteful to photograph a church ceremony, people grieving in the church, people exiting the church. They know it's distasteful to photograph the last rite of passage of the body being placed into the ground. They don't want to interfere in those moments. That's just one version of why there's no photos and imagery of either of those events. But then again, so I misspoke when I said at a WWE event. I like to again back up and say that it was this is what the article that I'm reading is saying. It was a memorial event, actually. And there's a clip of Erica Kirk taking the stage at a memorial service. This is by boardpanda.com that I'm reading, by a Maria Ehrman, entertainment news writer. She doesn't describe what exactly this was, but there was tens of thousands of people in bold letters, memorial service, but it was bold letters, red carpeted stage amid instrumental music and pyrotechnics. And it says here that Erica then covered her mouth and pauses to look at the crowd of tens of thousands of supporters, while a camera captures her from multiple angles. I can see why some people said that that is dystopian. So what is a memorial service? Well, I just read out the three stages. The wake, the church ceremony which may have a reception as a part of the church ceremony, the ritual. Again, I really want to emphasize that because Catholicism is a religion which contains rituals, right? Like sacraments, baptism, reconciliation, Eucharist, they're all rituals. So if you want to be traditional about it, you are undertaking rituals. And then the third one is the last rite of burying, I should say, the body. Using too many words. Burying the body. So which part of the three stages is a memorial service? That's the question I'm raising. Are we just having endless wakes? Wake after wake after wake? So the body's not even in the ground yet? Because by the traditional sense of it, the body isn't in the ground yet. We haven't even had the church ceremony yet. Charlie's just cooking in the freezer, waiting for the church ceremony because we're still having wakes, which is what a memorial service is, unless you want to stipulate otherwise what exactly it is that we're doing when this woman is, for, again, it might sound insincere and insensitive, lack of a better term, parading around to, as the journalist here at boardpanda.com quotes, or she says, and I quote, pyrotechnics and instrumentals. Music, she says. Pyrotechnics and music. And a red carpeted event. Why are we making this a spectacle? In a never-ending kind of a wake. Multiple wakes. So, again, the terminology here, if I read between the lines, a wake is a way to gain strength and be supported by a group of people. That is the traditional sense of a wake. So if these memorial services, aka wakes, are used in such a way where Erica Kirk is gaining support, reassurance, they're helping her grieve, the memorial services. then, pun intended, it's in good faith. Because she is using the wake as a way to process the grief and say her goodbyes while allowing the public to share in her grief and in her farewell, essentially, of her husband. So if you start digging between the lines, really trying to delve into it, theoretically there's no such rule that a wake must go for half a day, 1 day, 2 days. You can find information out there yourself when you start digging, but generally wake length is at the request of the family. It's family wishes and logistical capabilities, such as venues and, let's just call them hosts. So hosting venues, hosting individuals, attendance, organizing and planning. You can't just say there's going to be a Charlie Kirk Memorial, aka Wake, in Detroit, Michigan, and just rock up. Hey, yeah, this is the wake. You got to plan it out. You got to have expectations of the amount of numbers that will attend when you make these announcements. So whilst I can see why people are saying, well, it's dystopian, on the other hand, any kind of organization of public events is going to have some form of dystopian surrounding it, because you're organizing for a public event, for a public gathering. And a public gathering, more or less, is always going to be a spectacle. Now, again, I'm just like switching sides here. Where the problem with, and I think that this is the key thing that bothered people, is the pyrotechnics and the music. Why, you might ask? Well, why is it there? It's there for spectacle, and it's there to, it's happening around her, it's happening as she enters, so it's there, it exists to highlight her, to show her off. Now see, that's the problem with this whole 3-stage ceremony. The wake isn't about trying to show the living off. The wake is about remembering the fallen. It's about them. But now we're starting to distance, and the public, all the people in attendance, they might not think it. They might just be dialed in as to, oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, oh, Erica, man, we feel your pain. Whilst it's okay to feel her pain, it's not supposed to be about her. We're not supposed to be thinking about her pain. We can resonate, or we can have heartfelt feelings towards it, but at the end of the day, that's why it's a wake in a public ceremony, not to share in her grief, but to grieve in your own way, your way of saying goodbye. That's why, maybe without being able to explain it, and I'm not saying that I just did the best job of explaining it, but that's the way that I've gone about trying to unravel for you who might have also had some kind of negative feelings and associations with, hey, this is wrong, this is dystopian. And I agree with you. The fireworks and the music is. And it's dystopian because we're kind of making this a little bit distant from why we're actually here today. We're here to remember Charlie. This is about Charlie. Why the hell? Maybe hell is not the right word to use. Why the heck we got pyrotechnics and music blaring? And why do we have people cheering at all? There's nothing to cheer about. We're here to say goodbye to the fallen. There should not be one cheer in the house. We shouldn't even be applauding. When people make a speech at the church, at a funeral, when someone has died, when the grieving widow does get up there on the altar, she reads something that she's pre-written, or she just speaks off the cuff about her husband this isn't a hypothetical, when she says her goodbyes on the public forum at the church, now I shouldn't even say public, it is in a private forum because it's in the church, she isn't applauded at the end of it. Not everyone just stands up and starts clapping in the church. They know the time and place. So I do question, what are people cheering about? What is she gasping about? Look at all the support I have. Yeah, but this isn't about you and being supported. Yes, again, it ties in with wakes. It's for the person to feel supported. But people are missing the point of the wake. And she in turn is enabling them to miss the point of the wake. Because it's meant to be about her husband and not about having a spotlight on her, which maybe that was never the intent, but that is the outcome. The spotlight is on her. And very little, about 2 weeks later, is remaining on Charlie Kirk himself. Another thing I have to touch on is Catholic tradition in itself has changed multiple times. Now, by that I mean Catholic, in its purest sense, is the Word of God through the figurehead, and this is my understanding of it. I am not a priest, therefore I am able to be wrong about this, but my understandings of all the sacraments and teachings I've received through having had a Catholic education is that the figurehead is the Pope. So what the Pope says goes. He is the word and the will of God to man, the Pope. So if we're taking Erica Kirk and the rites of passage that she's traditionally following, she might be following what was tradition or traditional Catholicism that might have been dictated by a Pope 1,000 years ago, maybe 500 years ago. Maybe she's going by the word and the will of the Pope that we've got and what he said in 2025. Do you know for sure? I don't. So that tradition, what I'm saying is, can be different from person to person, from family to family. And before I lose you, yeah, well, tradition, that's what it is. It's traditional. It doesn't change. Yes, but incrementally it can. For example, traditionally, in the sense of 1,000 years ago, roughly speaking, there was no tradition to hold a wake for more than a couple of hours. There may have not even been a wake 1,000 years ago. Might have simply been the ritual of the church, and then there may have been a reading of the scriptures as the body was lowered into the ground, but there was no such thing as a wake. Now, even if you do the research yourself and don't want to take my word for it, it's perfectly acceptable for the church to allow a wake or a reception. You got to remember, 1,000+ years ago, when the religion, the faith of Roman Catholicism was practiced, people's fame didn't travel as far. All right? The known world wasn't like it is now. Now the known world is every inch of the globe that we can access through the internet. Back then, the known world was just the world that you knew about through word of mouth, through travels, through scripture, writings, teachings of someone else. Now, if you got one of these with a signal, you've got the known world, essentially. So now we have totally different outcomes of the kind of wakes that we are able to have. Now, there's more of a reason to have them because now someone can become a public figure. For someone to have been a public figure a long time ago, they were pretty much a leader. They had fame or notoriety from something they did. Now, I'm not saying now everyone can gain fame and notoriety, because some people, for example, won't want to cross certain lines. Some might not be as well spoken or able to lead. But now the means of accessing notoriety and fame are a lot easier. Not saying everyone can do it, but they're a lot easier than they would have been 1,000 years ago. Whereas you had to do something, not just do something, but someone had to witness something to tell of your tales. Yeah, you ever watched the show Vikings? Your tales through your actions were what gained you fame. Now, you can be famous to a very broad amount of people through your tales as well, but you can tell them. And the message can spread a lot more. Therefore, you have a lot more people wanting to attend your wake. Therefore, you might have a different set of circumstances surrounding the wake that you do. Because you need to be able, or you want to even, be able to accommodate for a vast, large amount of people. Oh, I've got a source here, for example, of everything I'm trying to convey to you. They have a site here on Catholic funerals etiquette and traditions guide. And there's a part here that talks about, yes, the funeral traditions, what is a Catholic funeral. But here there's a part where they're saying cremation has in recent years been deemed an acceptable practice by the Catholic Church. I don't need any further sources to give you that example of tradition changing. This right here stipulates that tradition is not always traditional. Tradition can be altered. It can be paraphrased and changed. Now, at its core, I personally believe tradition definitely shouldn't be. It can be adjusted, but the whole point of it being a tradition is you have to keep it intact as it was and as it always should be. So here it says Catholicism has recognized cremation when traditionally that was never the case. But what I'm saying is it's altered now that cremation is, well, it's got the label, it's traditional, it's recognized as traditional. Where a lot of Catholics will simply disagree and say, well, no, the body has to be, and it's taking that third stage away. It's altering tradition at its core. The 3 stages, the wake, the memorial, the reception, the church ceremony being stage 2, the ritual of the passing, and then lowering the body into the ground is the 3rd stage. With cremation, you don't have a 3rd stage. That's changing tradition. But here it says, at memorialplanning.com as just being one of the sources, well, hey, it's tradition now. What's the exact wording? Cremation has in recent years been deemed acceptable. That's, I quote, acceptable is the word they're using here. By who? And when you say in recent years, by who? That's where you got to dig a little deeper. Did the Pope, the word and the will of God, say that it's acceptable? By tradition, we've got to agree with the Pope, do we not? As Catholics, we can't question the Pope. Is it written anywhere in the bylaws of Catholicism that we have the right as Catholics to question the Pope's divinity, or dare I say authority? I think Nick Fuentes also said, and I'm quoting here, well, if that's the turning point way, end quote. That's what a wake is. By definition, a wake is your way, the family's way. Traditionally speaking, I'm not finding any set rules. If I do find any set rules, by Roman Catholic tradition, it's the Pope's word. And I'm not finding anything said, outright said by the Pope, the present Pope, where he says that you can't have a wake after someone's passed away. Your wake can't have public attendance, be on a grand scale, and the grand scale is defined as 1,000 people. Any more than 1,000 people becomes unacceptable for the there's no letter of the law. Right? There just is things left for interpretation. That's what I mean by it's bad when tradition gets altered. Not outright changed, but altered. So we don't know what Erica Kirk is going by when we see tradition. That's where a lot of people get mixed feelings about it, and they think that this is wrong because their understanding and belief of what traditional is, what Erica Kirk is doing with the glitz and glamour, is no longer seen as traditional by those people that are raising eyebrows, that are asking questions. Whereas she's being traditional, perhaps, key word here, because I can't talk for her, but perhaps she's being traditional in her purest sense. She thinks that this is the right way to go about it because the more of these wakes that I hold, it allows for people to say goodbye in their own way. And for her also, she can draw strength and assurance from it, which, traditionally speaking, is exactly what a wake affords the people or person grieving. But it comes back to that one thing that I said. It shouldn't become about the person who's grieving, which is why this is rubbing people the wrong way. So if you're a Roman Catholic, generally then your tradition should be Rome, Italy, Italian Catholicism. Now, everything that I could find on Italian Catholicism stipulates that their wakes generally last a couple of hours, 2 days at the most. And there's nothing that I can find here about multiple location changes. At most, it may change within a certain town or region. But the wake isn't going to be held in LA and another one cross country in New York. It's not even going to be 1,500 kilometers away. It'll be, say there's a wake, the Italian way is held in a suburb. So we'll use the geography of Australia, we'll take the state of Victoria, and then we'll take not the city of Melbourne, but the suburb of Brighton in Melbourne, which is a suburb of Melbourne. So I'm painting the picture for you. So the wake would be set in Brighton. And by that I also mean probably in this specific church. And if the person was prominent enough from that area, well known in that area, there may be something like down the main street of that suburb. Maybe in the streets where that person who passed away, the fallen, was well known and beloved. But even then, it's probably not going to start centralizing streets besides the main street. So again though, we're talking here when the world was a much smaller place, before people had the means. People couldn't cart a body around for days. The logistics of it, I used that word earlier in the video, they just wouldn't work. That's why wakes were on a main street at most, but generally within one place, because people weren't afforded, they weren't able to be given that opportunity. And there was no means to even alert people from across the state, the region sometimes. That's why when someone really prominent has passed away before these means came about, you'd hear of stories where people flocked from far and wide because word spread. So sometimes you get people in history where people do flock far and wide because the person that fell was so prominent that the word of their passing spread fast, and it spread everywhere, as fast as it physically could. But yeah, key word, physically. Right now things don't need to spread word of mouth physically. With phones, internet. So now because the word spreads a lot more, the standards for the word traditional has changed. I think this was actually said by someone. I'm not going to make attempt in saying who said it, but paraphrasingly, there's a new way to go about funerals and memorials now. And it's only new because now we have the means. I know it opens up a can of worms for debate, whereas, well, just because we got the means doesn't mean that it's the right way to do something. I'm not here for the debate. I'm just the vessel giving you the two sides. So one thing Nick Fuentes did say, now coming back to raising eyebrows, Nick Fuentes said that, well, it's a bit problematic and it's not in good faith. I'm using that. I don't think Nick Fuentes actually used the word faith. I'm just trying to add some puns into this as well. It's not in good faith and not very traditional by any sense of the word, any sense of the meaning, to have commentators there with headsets selling merchandise. I know for a fact Mark Dice said this about Candace Owens when she was holding her own wake, or memorial you could say, grieving in her own way. I think it was a live podcast that she was airing, and in midway or a quarter way, that's mostly irrelevant, she starts promoting merch. Well, when you start injecting your own agenda, you start injecting things where you can have some sort of personal gain, some kind of manipulation of people to try and get them to make a decision, well, that is in bad faith. That's against the spirit of the wake. Alright? Because now again we're detracting the attention from remembering Charlie Kirk. All of a sudden we're trying to get people to sign up for something. All of a sudden we're trying to get people to buy something. Hold on a minute. I don't need to become a part of something. I don't need to purchase this from you to grieve. I mean, I might believe I do. And it's also fair enough if it is. Maybe the person is actually going to donate all that money for the fallen's cause. We don't know that for sure, and that might not be the case. But it's detracting in that moment from the memory of the person, because now we've somehow made this a financial opportunity, which is not traditional and not in the good spirit of remembering someone who were grieving. Nick Fuentes goes on to say that what's with the pyrotechnics and the music at the funeral? Now, he's using that word. This is why language is so important. He's using the word funeral, going back to the traditional sense. Well, which stage are we at when we're talking specifically? Is this still the wake stage? Or is this the body in the ground stage? Is this we're back to the wake stage? Because like I said, traditionally, we as Catholics are permitted to hold wakes well and truly after the person has perished. The Bible, if we don't even want to have any specific denominations, but the Bible does not specify and does not forbid a wake or a memorial to be held from 1 to 1,000 days after the person is even in the ground. The person doesn't need to be above ground to continue to have memorials. And another thing that Nick Fuentes says and people have a problem with is she is continuing to engage social media into it by making such posts as "I miss him," with further things attached that I'm not going to try and requote, perhaps an image attached, but she's posting her grief, we'll call it, publicly. Again, traditionally speaking, she is allowed to do that because she has the means that I spoke about. Maybe people 1,000 years ago would have grieved in that sort of a way as well if they had the means. That's why people have a problem. They're looking at it traditionally based on tradition. The root sense of the word. That's what tradition is. What was done a long time ago. Now, I'm not here saying wrong or right, but I'm saying that tradition has altered. Now, I'm not sure how she's going about it, how she's picking and choosing, but a lot of people interpret tradition being something that doesn't necessarily pertain to your means in the present. So just because you have the means in the present doesn't mean you enact and enable all of those means. You still conduct yourself in such a way as tradition far back stipulated to act. And that tradition from the Italians, the Catholic Italians, where again Roman Catholicism originated, well, that does stipulate that commonly the wake does not exceed 2 days. And it is done. Sorry, I misspoke. It cannot be done, or it isn't done. Again, the wording is important when we're talking about these kind of topics. But commonly, it's not forbidden, but it's commonly not done because it's seen as untraditional. It's like an unwritten rule. Think of it that way if you're losing me. It's like an unwritten rule that wakes aren't carried out after someone's in the ground. And another thing, people are laughing that they're asking for donations. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, traditionally speaking, I'm keeping this as an argument. I'm like an advocate, a solicitor here for the word tradition. Traditionally, there's nothing wrong with asking for donations. Or not even asking. See, again, this is why wording is important. I'm not seeing it exactly. How is it that they're asking? Maybe you're just calling it they're asking for donations. But they're actually allowing for the opportunity for people to donate. A bit like when you go to a Catholic Mass, they pass the plate around. Might be a basket, a velvet basket. But it's passed around the church, the Mass. The proceedings, and people have a choice. They can throw their wallet in there if they want. Take all the ID cards out and throw fat stacks in there if they want. If they so choose. It does tie in with the core beliefs of Christianity. Right? The core beliefs that God gave us free will. And when people question, why does the church need to pass around a plate? Well, think of it this way. Symbolically, the passing of the plate is the church just giving you a chance, affording you the opportunity to give, to donate. And the circumstances are up to your own free will to interpret. Do I have the means? Do I want to? You can start raising questions. God doesn't forbid it. You can start raising questions of why? Look at how rich the church is. You're allowed to have your own opinion. You can think this is freaking stupid, man. Greedy ass church. Jesus, what you want money for? That's the free will that you have to think it. And you don't have to act out on it. No one is there now. Man, that donation plate just went right by the guy. Look at his fit. Look at his drip. He's got the means and he didn't donate. Motherfucker, I condemn you. No one's doing that. So when people are laughing at Erica Kirk and Turning Point and whoever they're really laughing at, I don't even know if all of them know who they're laughing at, but we'll just say laughing, raising eyebrows, questioning. Well, how is she going about it? Is she really pitching it as she's actually trying to make a sale of something, of some kind of goods? Or is it not so much as pitched, but just presented in such a way that affords people the opportunity to, using their free will, grieve in their own way by buying some kind of a token, a memento, whether it be in a form of a badge, t-shirt or a hoodie. I know it is in mildly poor taste, but you got to understand that that's just how some people operate. They actually have the most sincerest of intentions, and they actually might be grieving in their own way. That's why they say grief is rather interpersonal. There's no written rules on how you grieve. There's stages of grief that we know through psychology, through investigating, but it will come down to for that person to enact those stages of grief in their own way. All right? There is no fine print of how you act and how one processes those stages. Another term people have used is it's too much. She's too exposed, as in she's promoting it too much through the requests, through wanting. Well, maybe again, I've got to check myself. I'm using the word wanting. Well, maybe she's not wanting people's money. She's in her heart, again, I'm just trying to play both sides here and let you form your own opinion with your own interpretation, your own free will. Maybe she's wanting to afford people the opportunity to buy something so they can process the grief in their own way. Now, my opinion, now injecting my opinion, I think that that is distasteful. When you're trying to sell something, you're trying to give people an item, I'll tell you this much. If people want an item, they'll seek it out. That's why most commercials in general are distasteful, because you are promoting something, you are trying to, the original influencers influencing you to buy something. That's what a commercial is. So you're commercializing something, aka influencing. You're an influencer. And now where the distaste comes into it is through the means of influencing, right? You've all of a sudden, what I've said at the start of this, taken the eyes away from Charlie himself. You're just giving people the illusion that it's about Charlie. It's no longer about Charlie when you're influencing people to make purchases, when you're influencing people to make donations. That's why people think it's so distasteful in general. That's why they criticize when the plate is passed around in the church. See, she might be seeing it, the church might be seeing it when the plate's passed around as well. We're affording people the opportunity. And then people are thinking, yeah, I don't need to be afforded the opportunity. If I want to give, I'll give. That's why people get ticked off at World Vision commercials and UNICEF commercials. And the people given those commercials, why it's distasteful as well, is because they're not doing it sincerely. They're not doing it to give people an opportunity. They're actually doing it because they know that it has the power to manipulate certain types of people, a demographic of people, a cohort of people. And now it's no longer done in good faith because you've manipulated people emotionally, those that are susceptible to it, to make a decision. They didn't make that decision on their own fruition, so to speak. They made that decision because they were influenced to make it. That's where it's in poor taste. And that's why I think people are getting upset and they just haven't been able to vocalize it and explain it like I believe I have now for you to better understand the two sides and the problem in this whole Erica Kirk and portrayal of the grieving widow. Lastly, it's when there's a culmination of questionable actions is when people start truly raising eyebrows. So if there was one or two questionable things, quite a lot of people wouldn't even bat an eye. They wouldn't even come into question because it's one or two things. Maybe people would just tilt their head, so to speak. But when there's multiple things, the post with Charlie Kirk's body, okay, we can grieve with you. But then all of a sudden we have this wake, we have her forgiving the non-convicted shooter, we have her framing the topic at hand of I'm going to seize Turning Point. And certain things will raise questions for different types of people. Not everything that, say, garnered your attention and made you raise your eyebrows and made you question, well, it might not pertain to your neighbor who's also questioning the topic at hand, but he didn't register what you registered. So that's what I'm getting at with when something is questionable, there's numerous things and a lot more people are starting to pick up on it. That's why things need time to unravel. Because at impact, a lot of people are just going to register what happened. At impact, Charlie Kirk is killed. There's a wake. There's nothing really questionable about it. But then more and more things start coming out. Oh, the wake's dragged into day 2. Day 3, the wake is not just kept in, like I mentioned before, in a certain region. It's spreading. It's spreading through the use of the internet. There's posts, red carpets, music. Hold on a minute. This is questionable now. Certain things are coming out. Why is there a photo of Erica Kirk doing the devil horns symbolism? I'm not going to do it because I do it now on camera. I'm immortalizing the symbol. But you know what I mean when I say the devil horns. Why is she throwing that out there? Why is there a photo captured of her doing that? The more and more things, and as time goes on, as she keeps pursuing this public exposure, now like I said, maybe the public exposure is being pursued because that's her way of grieving. But it's in turn, I don't think there's anything wrong with people who are triggered by the grieving. Yeah, there'll be people on multiple sides of the fence. Maybe someone like Mark Dice will say, man, that's crazy. You're talking crazy. People are just grieving. Maybe that's the case. That's not for me to judge. That's for God to judge, because indeed people are allowed to grieve in their own way. But the fact that it's raising eyebrows, we shouldn't shy away from that fact. It is a fact. It's raising eyebrows because people are starting to raise questions. And the more people start raising questions, the more the situation deems that it should be questioned. Means people don't understand. When you start getting different videos, different people saying this is suspicious, that is weird, that is odd. They might not say any of those buzzwords, but they might simply say, why? Why was there a red carpet? There'll be another group of people that won't have noticed it. They'll just be questioning, why did she throw up devil horns? There'll be other people questioning, why is she selling things? There may be people that will be able to answer all those questions, and they'll answer them logically. And I'll sit there and I'll be like, yep, I get your point of view. You answered everything. I still don't think it's traditional, and my interpretation of it is I don't believe it's right, which is why so many people, again, are asking those questions, because at the core level, they don't believe it's right. That's when something becomes questionable. Again, in turn, people can be like, yeah, but Gus, no one would be asking questions if people like you didn't bring it up. You're influencing people to ask questions. Nah. Like the church, I suppose, I'm affording people the opportunity to raise questions if they want to. And that's what Charlie Kirk was doing. That was his message. For people to have open debate, to raise questions directed at him, for him to be able to answer those questions in turn to the best of his ability, for him to ask questions of other people and see if they can explain their position and views and why they stand by it. I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Hopefully this video is just giving you a perspective. Not to influence you to bat for Team Fuentes and his views, not to bat for me and mine. Just to take everything, if you've gotten this far, and use it to form a basis of your own list of questions, your own rock solid opinion. Maybe the opinion you had now, you're tweaking it a little bit and thinking about it in a different light with new information presented. Maybe you think down outright crazy and you've got an opinion of me now that I'm insensitive and I'm talking wild, that I'm making some kind of accusations, which I'm not. None at all. This whole video was just me saying that I'm questioning certain things, and maybe there's answers to those questions. Part of the reason this video was posted, because if you have questions for me, you can feel free to ask them. I ain't shying away from any of them. So in good spirit, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. See you in the next one.